watching famous games on YouTube.
Hi, I apologize for the technical difficulties. It seems like my stream started automatically once again when I was just trying to queue it up for like an hour later. I apologize for those who saw some dead air out there. Anyways, let's take a look at the position in GME, and we'll join the position. And the last video, I had put on the video in the comments that I had closed the position. And just to refresh your memory, we were in GameStop GME, and I had a condor on where I was long the 180, 170 put spread, and I was short the 190 put spread. So I did have no position for most of the session Friday, but then I did reestablish a new position, moving the strikes up slightly. So if we look at the new position now, we can see that we've moved the strikes up. So now I'm long the 190, 180 put spread, and I'm short the 120, 110 put spread. So not only have we moved the strikes up 10 points, it's a tighter range now. Before we had a 70-point range, which was our kind of our target point. Now we have a 60-point range. So we want GME to be between 180 and 120 for maximum profitability. And I think the reason for my switching things around was kind of an anxiety over the fact that it seems like GME has stopped going down, at least for the time being, and started moving back up again, sort of. But it appears that I kind of priced things wrong when I put this new position on, and essentially it seems like I lost like about $1,000 just putting the position on because I didn't price things right. I paid around $5.81 for this condor, and it turns out I probably should have paid about $5.50 for it, something like that. However, it does collect $113 of theta per day, so if things kind of stay in orbit, the money should come back relatively quickly. But certainly there was a price for switching the strikes here, and we've talked about that before. GME, although it's a pretty well-known name, is not there's not a ton of liquidity in some of these strikes. If we want to figure out how much liquidity there is, we can go ahead and look at the open interest. And so here we've got Thinkorswim screen behind me, and we can see the open interest on these different strikes. Let me see if I can move this over a little bit. So if you look to my right here, you can see the strikes that we're talking about. Look at the 190 put here. This open interest is only 76, right? So that's pretty small. And this is a relatively complex trade. It's not like you're just buying one option or even two. It's a 4-option trade, and thus there are less people on the other side willing to do that sort of trade. Sometimes it can be easier to execute a trade where you've got a couple legs like this because it's there's not a lot of directional risk involved just putting the trade on. So for example, if you were going to just go in and buy a bunch of puts, people would be reticent to take that side of the trade, possibly just because there is some directional risk immediately and they want to make sure they could get stock against it to hedge it, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes when you're just either doing some sort of calendar spread or you're doing some sort of trade like a condor where the trade sort of hedges itself in a way. It's not a very big directional trade. It's more of a trade that works or doesn't work over a period of time. You can get better prices. But one of the things I want to impress on you is that the key to success or failure with something like a condor trade or a butterfly trade is going to be how liquid the stock is that you happen to be putting it on or off in, right? If you can get in and out for relatively fair value, say like sort of mid-market, and there's a lot of liquidity there. So for example, if I were to price this condor, for example, if I was going to, where the market's closed right now, but just for example, if I were to go in and say I want to buy the 190 put, I want to sell the 180 put, and I want to sell the 120 put, and I want to buy the 110 put, we show right now 545 as the mid-market. Now, if the market was open and the spreads were not very wide, and if you were able to go in here and either buy or sell this trade right at mid-market, like if I were to put up a trade buying one of these mid-market and it were to immediately fill, buying it, and the same thing if I were to sell it and it were to immediately fill, then you'd know that there was a decent amount of liquidity in here. And for maybe a stock such as Apple, for example, there would be more liquidity. Or if you were doing this sort of trade in the SPX, for example, there's a lot of liquidity there. That the cost of getting in and out is going to many times determine whether you're profitable or not. You can have a great trade on and it can work in your favor, but if it costs you an arm and a leg to get in and out, then it's going to take away your profitability. A lot of times, people will let you in on a trade. It seems easy when you put the trade on, but when you try to get back out of it, it's difficult. And the only way you're going to be able to really judge and tell how difficult or easy it is to trade in any particular issue is over time. It's going to take a little trial and error and kind of feeling it out. And certainly for me, I have this condor on 22 times. During the trading day, I will put one lots here and there to test the waters, to see how liquid things are. Now, there's various theories about different times of the day. A lot of trading occurs in the first half an hour, right? So if you really need to do something, it might be a good time to do it in the first half an hour. There are some traders that only trade during that period. Also, the last hour of the day is a busier time. If you're trying to get something done at 1:15 when everybody's at lunch, it might be harder to execute. The other sort of obvious thing is if you have a trade on and the market seems to be going the other way from the trade, then it can be easier to execute. So for example, if I'm long a bunch of puts and GME happens to be tanking at the moment, then it's going to be easier to sell those puts than if GME is rallying away from kind of my trade. So you want to keep that in mind. The best conditions for selling something are when everyone else is buying it, of course, and the best conditions for buying something are when everyone else is selling it. And so you kind of want to be cognizant of that. People are going to be reticent to trade with you if the current conditions make it appear like that would be a bad trade for them, right? So, for example, if GME has been rallying the last couple days, trying to sell some puts is going to be harder than if it's been selling off the last couple days. So you want to be strategic in your timing. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan as a trader of stop loss type orders where you are going to put an order in ahead of time that sort of protects you. Now, a lot of times when you have trading instructional videos or you have new traders, they're going to tell you, oh, well, you put on this trade and then you're going to put a stop loss order in and that's going to protect you, so you can only lose so much. And the kind of the ideas behind that are sound, right? You want to make sure that as a new trader that you are putting some limits in where you don't give up all your capital, right? And I certainly agree with the philosophy of that. However, in execution, it cannot work out very well for you, especially with option trading. If you have a liquid stock and you're talking about, well, I'm going to buy 1,000 shares, and if it goes down X amount, I'm going to sell those shares out. Or conversely, if I'm short and it goes against me, I'm going to buy those shares back. A stop loss might work a little bit better. However, you still have that out of market hours time period when stuff can gap on you and there's not a lot of liquidity. I guess my point being that I definitely agree with the ideas behind saying I'm going to limit my losses, but as far as execution goes, I prefer to execute those limits manually. So if I have a position on, I'm going to be watching it closely enough all the time that if it starts to, if I set a limit for myself of how much I'm willing to let it go against me, I'm going to be watching and able to come in and execute manually the trade which gets me out of that losing position. But I'm not going to put some sort of automatic trade in that's going to automatically take care of it for me, because you're just going to get hurt so much in the pricing when it automatically gets out of that trade that it's not going to be worth your while. So that's why I'm not a fan of just putting some sort of automatic order in that gets you out of a losing trade. If you are serious enough about trading to put options positions on, then you should be serious enough to follow those positions constantly. And if you can't be following a position constantly, then you need to pare it back to a small enough trade that it can't hurt you a whole lot. That's kind of my philosophy on stop loss and whatnot. So this is kind of a painful situation that I lost a bunch of, a grand on just getting back into this trade last session, and I can see under that P&L open here on my right that losing $1,000 thing, and it's a sore on me, but that's the reality of trading. That's kind of what happens sometimes, and that's kind of what happened this last trading session, is that getting back into the position, I've got more running room to the upside now. Instead of 170 being the upper limit, now it's 180, and it appears that the stock's pretty firm here around 162. So I like the position better. However, to put it on and execute it cost me a lot of money, so that's unfortunate. But at this point, once you put a trade on, win, lose, or draw, you got to kind of throw that trading card. We used to have trading cards back in the day. You write the trade, and then you put one copy of the trade in something called a belt, where it was a conveyor belt that would take the trade down, and somebody else would record it somewhere, and then you'd hold the other ticket and hand it to your clerk. Well, at the end of the trade, when you've written a trade, you kind of have to throw it over your shoulder and move on. So that's what I have to do here after a little loss on that execution, and move on to the next thing. It's been a good couple months for me, and so I have to take the good with the bad here. But this just proves once again that execution is very important, and getting your pricing figured out properly is very important. All right, so that does it for now. We'll see what happens today. Will GME continue to move up, or will it kind of fall back? We have earnings coming not too far off, right? I believe it's September 7th. Let's see if we can take a look at this real quick here. Anyways, GME earnings are coming up in the not too distant future. Before this trade that I have on now is before expiration, we will have earnings, and so there is a good chance that we will take this trade off ahead of earnings because, okay, so earnings, yes, 9.7 after the market for GME. So we have, a little time till 9.7, but not a whole lot, a few weeks out. In between now and then, we'll have to make a decision. Do we want to carry this trade through earnings, or do we want to take it off? And right now, I would say I want to take it off before earnings. You never know what's going to happen, and that kind of throws the calculus of what I'm trying to do here off. So in the meantime, we'll look for GME to kind of stay in orbit here. I'd love to see it just hang out and maybe go back to 150 and hang out. But what I'd love to see doesn't always happen in the market, as you know. All right, thanks for watching once again. Apologies for the weird thing turning on this morning, but we're back, and welcome to the week. I hope you have a good trading week, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.